Hello and welcome to another edition of Dishing on Presentation. This is Sharyn Fitzpatrick. I'm the editor of Presentation Expert, and I am very lucky to have with me one of my favorites, Geetesh Bajaj from India, and Indezine, which is a fabulous resource for all of us. And welcome, Geetesh.
Thank you for having me in your program, Sharyn. It's always good to see you.
Yes, it's always good to see you. I miss being at the summit, so it's always great to catch up with everyone. Tell me, in your opinion, what are you hearing? What is the hot things going on with PowerPoint right now?
I think there's not just one hot thing and just not one real important thing happening, but lots and lots of things happening, and lots of things happening at different levels. Okay. The biggest important thing that I think that we are witnessing is that PowerPoint is everywhere. You have PowerPoint on Android now. You have a PowerPoint on iOS. You can use it in a web browser, and you still have the desktop versions that work on Mac and Windows. So I think that's a very important change that we have witnessed in the last, say, 2 or 3 years. Added to that, what's happened is a lot of new features are now coming up for people who are subscribed to Office 365 versions of PowerPoint. That is actually Office 365 versions of Microsoft Office. And I know you are a lot excited about these features, and we spoke about this before, like Designer, Zoom, and Morph. And what's amazing is these features are not only on the desktop versions, but they also have made it to some of the tablet and phone platforms. And I think that's really, really amazing. Design-wise, when we move away from the PowerPoint, just speaking about PowerPoint and speak in general about presentations, lots of wonderful things happen on the design area as well. A lot of things happening on the color fronts, where we're not really, definitely we're not looking at any number of bright colors. We are all looking at more muted colors now, but also more neutral colors. And I think that's a wonderful trend. The other trend is we are looking more at textures for fills and for slides and for backgrounds. And I think textures add a great touch, and that's probably one of the design trends that's really, really catching up.
Yeah, I definitely love Office 365. You guys convinced me, I think, last summit to make sure I went out and bought that. And it's great because you never know what's going to happen. You come in and you open it up and, oh my, there's something new that's coming up. You know, just today there was stuff coming up with Excel when I was using it. So I think that's great. I definitely see flat design as something that, with the muted colors and everything, that people are really going towards. And I definitely have seen some great examples of that, even in some infographics, which have been really powerful, even with a flat design. So
absolutely.
So what's your least favorite thing about PowerPoint this year? Do you have any things you wish that Microsoft would change?
There's not really something as least favorite. It's I would put a different angle at that. I think too much of anything is bad. So it's not really up to Microsoft, but it's up to users to decide what to use and to which extent to use it. A lot of people get carried away, especially when you get a real new feature. Even with Morph, if you have everything morphing, it's really not going to have too much of an impact. It's always good to use it in restraint and use it only when it adds value to your content. So I think that's the key there.
I think that's a good point. I mean, one of the things is, I love the fact that Office 365 has new features and extra, fun stuff to do, but how do you get through it? Is there a way to kind of decide what's going to work for you? How do you learn all of it? What's the best place to go to learn how to use Morph or how to use Zoom?
I could say you could go to InDesign and find a lot of tutorials there and learn about these features, but I think even more important is actually going and playing with these options. Okay, as you know, unless you jump in the water, you cannot swim, and
right.
so you really need to actually go and play with it. And definitely don't do that when you have to do your presentation tomorrow or in the evening. But find some fun time, find some play time. You deserve to do that. And that's a message to every PowerPoint user out there, to go and play with that stuff. And a lot of people just they call it inspired, but essentially they're trying to replicate what they have seen elsewhere. But that's a great disservice, because they are actually not going and playing around with it. Because if they play around with it, they will actually find ways to use that which no one else has done before, and
Mm-hmm.
that's going to add their own value, their own stamp to that. And I think that's what's going to set them apart from everyone else.
I think that's a good point. I think you have to think about the people are maybe in love with Morph, and they may overuse it instead of using it for the right content, because then it does become a distraction and not a way to help explain what your content is on your slides. Totally agree. So you mentioned something about tablets. Tell us about PowerPoint and tablets. Have we come a long way from even a year ago?
I think we came actually a long way, not a year, maybe 2 years ago. And PowerPoint on the iPad is awesome. I love it, and it works much more better than I ever thought it would work like 5 years ago. So okay, so it's great. And I remember when Microsoft released PowerPoint on iOS, and it was a very limited version where you couldn't even actually go and open and see your files unless you had a paid subscription. Okay.
Right.
And now, except for a few features, you can almost do everything with even if you don't have a paid Office 365 subscription, and you just have a OneDrive account, you can do a lot more now. But that's definitely, it really pays to have an Office 365 subscription, because you get the extra cool features.
So you mentioned iPad. How about on the Android tablets? Have you played with it on the Android tablets?
I'm not much of an Android user, but I have played enough to just go and test it out and just look around that. And I think more or less they replicate what's happening on iOS, but they have some extra cool features on their own. And it's probably like some features come first to Android or first to iOS, and then they all play catch up with each other.
Right. So give me let's say, if you would tell our audience, give us some top tips for your top 5 tips for PowerPoint. What would you tell people?
There's one big tip and 4 small tips. I'll just put it across that way. I don't know what 4 I'm going to tell you, but let me start with the one big one. Okay. The one big one is actually, don't be tempted to launch PowerPoint, open your desktop or laptop and start creating a presentation, because unless you don't know what you're going to say, it does not matter how well you say it. So first of all, understand what you want to say. Take a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, scribble over there, play out with ideas, and really think about your audience and what you want them to understand. What is the key takeaway message that you want to give to them? Only after you have that is reason enough for you to open PowerPoint and do something. So that's the most important tip, and I see that being flouted all the time. Okay, and let's go to the 4 small tips. I love this feature where you have these merge tools options in PowerPoint, and a lot of people use that to take 2 or more shapes and merge them, or cut them out and make different shapes over there. But a lot of people can also use that feature to convert text, okay, to shapes, and that's amazing, because you have a lot of dingbat fonts which are icon fonts, okay, and you can convert each character into a shape there, and you have a ready-made library of icons available there. And more importantly, when you have something that you really must use a particular font for, and you're not sure that that font is going to be there available with everyone, in rare situations, you can actually go and convert that entire text into a shape, and it's going to work everywhere. So,
I didn't know that. I'm excited about that one. I'll have to go try that one.
That's a really amazing, cool feature. And the third option is this has been in PowerPoint for like 15 years or maybe even more, and that's the photo album option. And a lot of people get limited by photo album, because what photo album does is creates a completely new presentation. It does not get the photos in your existing presentation. You can use that to your advantage and create a photo album with all the pictures that you want to get in over there. You can have 1 picture per slide, 2 pictures per slide, or 4 pictures per slides, with titles, without titles, with captions, without captions. And you can sort of import 100, 200, 500 pictures in probably less than a minute or 2 minutes, okay? And that's really, really fast. Even if you really don't want to use them in a photo album presentation, but a regular presentation, create a photo album, drag the slides from the photo album presentation and put that into a regular presentation. It's still faster than doing it manually. So that's something I find a lot of people could really benefit and save time doing that. One another thing what you can do is if you create a lot of charts and tables, I find a lot of people replicating the same chart, the same table over and over again. And although PowerPoint has good styles, even for charts and for tables, there are going to be something of your own, your corporate branding, your or what you particularly like, or maybe you've adapted a style and made your own and worked on it. You can actually go and save chart styles, but that's something that's merits a whole discussion, and we won't get into that now. But what you could do is create a library of slides that of charts, okay? If Of column charts of different numbers of columns, of different column types, and or pie charts or whatever you want, or the type of tables that you use more frequently, and keep them ready, and then just go and get that slide into your new presentation. It's always easier to change the text or change in a table or change the numbers in a chart rather than doing it all over again.
You know, I think that's a really good tip. I do that in a way already. I call it my sandbox. So what I do is I have slides that I know I always use, whether it be for a webinar or for doing articles or even doing this on presentations. I have a slide deck for it that I use. And then I just go practice and modify whatever I need to match the fact that you're the speaker this month, you know, that I'm speaking to. And that's a great tip.
So you already do that, and you understand how much time you can save by just doing so. And you really don't have to consciously go and create something like that. When you're working on an existing presentation and you think there's a slide that you'll use often, just go and drag it into your sandbox presentation and just keep it there, and you can use it in the future.
Yeah, I call it a sandbox because I feel like that's where I start to go to design a presentation. And sometimes I'll go to my sandbox for inspiration because there's things that I've created that I know I could adapt or use for something else. And it's sometimes where I go to get my creativity started.
I love that name. Maybe I could use it sometime for a tutorial and credit you with the name.
Oh, totally fine. Yes.
So I need to get you one more tip, right? That will make
one more tip.
Okay. You know something? There is a hidden pane on PowerPoint where you have the slides pane. That's called the outline pane. It's not even visible by default anymore. You have to go to the View tab and in the ribbon and click Outline, and then you can see your outline of the entire presentation, which is everything from the first slide to the last slide, the text content, which is in the placeholders at one go. Microsoft has made it a little more difficult to get to the outline pane than before, but that's probably because a lot of people don't use it, and but it is a very, very useful feature. So I would really encourage people to actually go and look, especially if you have a long presentation, to go and look at your outline pane and see what is there. And the best part is you can actually select everything in the outline pane and you can make changes there that will affect the entire presentation. You can take content from one slide to another slide. And there are shortcut keys to go up and down and move slides, move parts of some text in one slide to another. And you can do it really rapidly and fastly if you're doing on the outline pane rather than doing slide by slide. So I think that's something people should look at. There are a lot of keyboards shortcuts that work on the outline pane that make life really simple for you and easy for you. On our site, we do have a keyboard shortcuts listed for all the versions. And if you wanted, everybody wants a handy book, we also provide an ebook that people can buy and download. But they don't have to buy and download because all that content is also on the pages if they really want to go and look at the page over there.
That's great. Why don't you tell us about InDesign? So I know what it is, but tell our audience in case they don't.
InDesign is basically, you know, it's. I never planned to create a site. It sounds funny to say that, but it was. It just evolved. Okay. In those days, you had news groups where actually on Microsoft servers, and they worked in a newsreader program. A lot of people don't know how that works these days, but I would frequent those news groups and answer questions that a lot of the other people were asking, and I found that I was repeating the same answers over and over again. And that's when I realized that I had to create a site. And that's how InDesign started. And I never planned to, I never even imagined that it would get to the level that it does today.
Yeah, it's amazing. My first place I go when I have a question I can't quite figure out. So I've definitely learned a lot in the last few years thanks to you and your site.
Thank you for your kind words, Sharyn.
Yeah. Well, that's all the questions I have. I know I wanted to keep it short and so you could get your day started, but thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience?
Not really. I just would like them to understand that when they actually create a presentation, be it in PowerPoint or elsewhere, the first thing that they have to understand is they have to understand their audience. And because ultimately, whatever you're doing is you're doing it for your audience. Nobody really creates a presentation for themselves, although they could do so. But the end result is you have to go and deliver it to someone else. So essentially, think about your audience before you do anything.
I think that's great advice. We should do that not only for presentations, but for anything we write or anything. Think about what if they have it in their hand, what would be their reaction? Is that the reaction you want to create? And make sure you do create that moment that you want them to have. So Geetesh, I want to say thank you very much for joining me today, and I really appreciate it. And this is Sharyn Fitzpatrick, dishing on presentations.